where everyone's going to feel safe.
Tonight, they go head to head. Crime, housing, education, transportation, and equality. The 2021 Atlanta mayoral debate starts now.
CBS 46 presents the 2021 Atlanta mayoral runoff debate in partnership with Georgia Stand Up and Clark Atlanta University.
Good evening and welcome to historic Clark Atlanta University, the very first historically black college and university in the South. And tonight, these hallowed halls will play host to the Atlanta mayoral runoff debate between candidates Felicia Moore and Andre Dickens. I'm CBS 46 anchor Karen Greer, and I am one of your moderators for the evening. Let us begin right now with the rules for tonight. Each candidate will get 90 seconds to answer a question asked by the moderators. If warranted, the candidates will be allotted a 30-second rebuttal. A rebuttal will only be granted if a candidate directly addresses the candidate or one of their platforms. Near the end of this evening, we will have a short lightning round where each candidate will get 30 seconds for a question with no rebuttals. And at the end of this debate, both candidates will be given 60 seconds to make a closing statement. I'm joined tonight at this moderator table with the beloved and well-known Mr. Rashad Ritchie, Dr. Rashad Ritchie, that is, who is a political commentator and radio show host.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. We do have a live studio audience, a live auditorium. We have requested that everyone remain silent out of respect for both candidates. However, we will break with protocol briefly, and we can give a round of applause to the candidates right now. City Councilman Andre Dickens and Council President Felicia Moore. All right, let's get started. We had a coin toss, and Felicia Moore won that coin toss. She has elected to answer first. The majority of the questions came directly from members of the community who are headed to the polls November 30th or before.
So we begin tonight's debate on the topic of crime and public safety, which recently polled as one of the top concerns, you might imagine, at the majority of the voters in Atlanta. So with a recent spike in crime across the city, what is your specific approach? And what do you want to do to enhance public safety and make all parts of the city a safe place to be? Ms. Moore, we begin with you.
Yes, thank you for that question. You know, I was up at 4 o'clock in the morning. It was the earliest, 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, fielding calls from citizens, from bullets flying through their home to them getting beaten, robbed. I mean, this has been going on for a while, and people are really scared. They can't go about their daily activities. And so my approach to dealing with this issue is a comprehensive approach, one that takes in our children, which many youth are violating the law. It takes in their parents to get them so that we can break that poverty cycle that's going on in our community. It talks about getting more cops on our streets now so that we can increase the presence. We've lost many. It talks about working with our court system to make sure the repeat and violent offenders are not continuing to be let out on the streets. And it also talks about how we deal with our nightlife, making sure that we are doing our job to enforce the codes and make sure everybody is safe and makes money and has fun. And then it also talks about a very important piece, and that's the community. All of us have to say that we are ready to take our city back, and that violent crime in our community is no longer acceptable. So my approach is very comprehensive, and it's one that I believe will get us to where we all want to be.
Mr. Dickens.
Yeah, make no mistakes about it. Let's be clear. We are in a crime wave, and it will be my job when I'm mayor to make sure this is not the new normal. I was the first candidate in this mayoral campaign to publish my public safety plan, and it was vetted by former police chiefs across the nation. My plan is the Safe Streets Plan. It's a balanced approach to safety and justice. It's a way to be smart on crime. The S is to surge to hire 250 more officers in the first year because we are 400 officers down, to get to 400 officers more by the second year. And then that is to be able to make sure those officers are trained to be able to have conflict resolution, that we also surge to have more street lights and license plate readers and cameras to make sure that we keep people from having crime occur and to catch criminals if crime does occur. The A is to arrest the gang leaders that are preying on our youth. The F is to have a task force to be able to get these illegal gun traffickers out of our communities, but also to have a task force to deploy specialists for mental health and for homeless cases that are occurring. The E is to empower community-based policing by our APD to make sure officers get out of their cars and walk for an hour through the beat to go to the gas stations, convenience stores, and the supermarkets and shopping centers. 60% of our crime is youth related, ages 13 to 25. If we get youth crime down, we get overall crime down. I have a youth plan, and that's what I'll enact to be able to bring crime down.
Mr. Dickens, I will start with you on this question. 90% of residents in Atlanta believe that some police reform is necessary, police accountability. Now, your opponent, Ms. Moore, said that you have contributed to the poor morale in the Atlanta Police Department due to your vote to withhold $73 million in police funding. What is your response to that?
Yeah, Ms. Moore was incorrect by saying that I contributed to the morale decrease in our police force. Police were actually upset about not having due process when one of their members was fired and ultimately arrested without giving due process. What we attempted to do, 7 council members attempted to be able to look at the standard operating procedures of police officers and the training. After George Floyd and numerous other unarmed black people were killed, we wanted to make sure that police officers were properly trained in a 21st century way, but also to do the very thing that a number of officers have asked us to do, which was take them off of mental health and homeless calls so that specialists can respond to that. For us to have a non-emergency service that can go out there 24/7, just like we used to have in the 80s called DCI. And this is a way for us to be able to use our officers for violent crime, because if they're spending 1 hour dealing with someone that's experiencing homelessness, they're not spending 1 hour taking care of someone's burglary or preventing someone's car from being broken into. It's about making sure we appropriate the proper level of response for the proper level of offense, and to make sure officers are ready to respond. This is part of criminal justice reform, as well as how I added 2 youth members to the review board, where after an incident occurs, we now have individuals between the ages of 18 and 30 that can now help adjudicate a case, which before we've only had older adults. Now that's a part of what I did. I passed legislation to add the youth in there, because youth are often victims of these.
Thank you. Ms. Moore, police accountability.
Can I respond?
You can. Give me 1 second.
Yes, my name was mentioned, and Ms. Moore is not incorrect in my statement. What he stated in the beginning, before he started rambling out about his plan, was that there was an environment in the department because of all the issues that happened around George Floyd and around the incidents we had in the city. And that's why I've always asked him and haven't got a firm answer about his judgment, because at that time morale was down because of due process issues. And it was stated over and over again that if the city council, for whatever reason they chose to do it, wanted to reappropriate money in that budget, which has been called defunding the police, that it would continue to strike another blow to morale in the police department, and that it did.
Mr. Dickens, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond.
Yeah, actually, she said what I said, but then she added some more to it. She's clear on the fact that due process is what led, lack of due process is what led to the demoralization of police, and not us looking at how we can get police from doing non-emergency response calls. She's trying to, talk as if she is a police officer. I believe officers are stronger than that. I believe that they put their lives on the line, and that when we say we want to help them with more training and changing the standard operating procedures, that they're strong enough, men and women, to not need Ms. Moore to tell them that they're demoralized. They're bigger than that.
All right, Tom and Ms. Moore, last time, 30 seconds, and then we'll move to the next one.
I'm talking from experience, because I reach out to officers and they reach out to me. I have several of them that have called me, and I'm telling you directly what I was told from them, not something that I'm making up. Again, the environment was such that it's bad judgment for a policymaker to continue to hurt the morale of the department, and I stand by that.
Thank you.
All right,
Is it
Ms. Moore,
possible that I get to make
No,
sure
that's
that
it. We're
we've
gonna
got to
move
stop on that one. Let's talk about, we've talked crime and we're talking about police, but let's talk about some of the socioeconomic problems that we've noticed, that we've seen in some of the neighborhoods, and what are the issues that are actually leading to these crimes being committed, especially in neighborhoods where crime has plagued people's way of life. What can we do about that, Ms. Moore?
Well, I've had the great fortune for 5 terms to represent District 9, a very diverse district, large Hispanic population that doesn't get a lot of shout out, but it also goes, as they say, from Bankhead to Buckhead, and which is also Bankhead is down Lee Hollowell Parkway. So I've dealt with those communities in areas where they're very challenging. So there's many things that need to be done. And as part of my platform, when I talk about the children, making sure that we have mentoring, after school programs. These kids want to make money, make sure they have the opportunity to do that. And then using our recreation centers as a holistic center where we can expose them to other things. As president, I had young girls who were middle school from those communities, exposing them to STEM, and it is starting to open their horizons to other things that they can do. But it also means that we have to look at the families, because we can do all the enriching things we want with the children, but we've got to help the families, get them above living wage jobs, work with our unions, get them into apprenticeships, and get them into home ownership so the child can see the parent do something that they hadn't seen in their time. That's how you start to break that cycle, by introducing, exposing, and getting people to be able to lift themselves up.
And Mr. Dickens.
Can you repeat the question, please?
What do you plan to do with the socioeconomic problems that really create the crime in our neighborhoods? How do you expect people to feel more comfortable being at home?
Yeah, so the truth of the matter is that is the root causes that we have to deal with, the socioeconomic challenges that we have. We have to create an economic ecosystem that works for everyone. And that's what I've done in my adult life. I don't just tisk and say this is a problem and not solve it. I would never be in a district for so long and not create an after-school program like I did in Tech Bridge. I've created a program that trains youth on how to code and how to fix iPhones and how to fly drones. This keeps them active and busy and setting their eyes on a prize to be able to be a better entrepreneur or a technologist to go on to college. You create programs and you create opportunities when you see a void. I would also say that it's important for us to talk about after-school programs that I've also created, where we deal with entrepreneurship and working with people. When the water boys were out there on the corner, what I did was I took them in and I trained them about entrepreneurship, and we got teams together with helping empower youth, that organization, and I Am a Father First, and several others, and we taught them on entrepreneurship skills so they don't have to sell water. Right now they're fixing iPhones, making $40 and $35, or selling shirts. So when we talk about socioeconomic shift, that's why I train people to get high-tech jobs so that they go from poverty to prosperity. I've done that in Vine City, English Avenue. When I saw a problem, I solved a problem. In just 8 years on council, all the time, I see it and I try to fix it. When I'm mayor, you'll see a whole lot of fixing going on to help this socioeconomic shift.
Not too long ago, and I will go to Ms. Moore for the first this time. Not too long ago, Atlanta made national news because an APD officer kicked an unarmed African-American woman who was handcuffed and her stomach was on the ground going through a mental health crisis. That officer was fired, not arrested. A lot of people in Atlanta have lost faith in members of the police department. What would you do to make sure that trust is built back up while taking care of the massive crime surge in Atlanta?
That was a very horrendous situation. Someone sent me the video, and when I watched it, I just said, this is unacceptable. And as you know, I spoke out quite loudly about that. And those are not the type of incidents that we need to have in our city, and certainly appropriate action was taken to fire that officer. But what we have to do is change the culture of policing in the city. And to do that, we need to make sure that we're having conversations. I love the program like Clippers and Cops, where you get people in the community and officers talking together and having real raw conversations. I also want to make sure that I chip away at this blue wall of silence. When I have conversations with the officers that I know, they tell me confidentially they know of officers or incidents in the department that need to be addressed, but they are fearful of retribution. And what I want is an anonymous tip line where they can call in. And I'm also looking at trying to move internal affairs externally so that we can have someone who can, outside of the department, look into these incidents. We have to start chipping away at how we deal with people, how we interact with people. We talk about de-escalation training, but let's talk about not escalating in the first place. And I know that I've had incidents personally with officers where they start off with a bad attitude, and I can see, depending on who they're talking to, that it could turn into a bad situation. So I believe it's the tone from the top, and I will set that as the mayor, that we're going to change the culture. Thank you.
Yeah, that incident was a travesty. It should not have happened, and our police force correctly fired that officer. But we also have to talk about the culture where other officers were on the scene. Officers also have a duty to intervene, and that is something that came about after that vote that we took in 2020, because this was a part of it. The 8 can't wait, where we set out standards for de-escalation for officers that have to intervene when another officer is doing something that is not above board. This all came out of after George Floyd, and also us putting in that 2020 vote that did not pass, that has been talked about already today. This was us trying to change the standard operating procedures to prevent these things from happening in the very first place, but also to set a standard of action that police officers won't commit these type of incidents. This woman was handcuffed, she was on her face, she was laying down. That was end of it. All you had to do was walk away and take her to the car. But yet his temper continued to flare because of something that was in the culture or something that was in him. And therefore we had to have the duty to intervene, and we passed that legislation. This is about de-escalating crime, de-escalating issues, and having conflict resolution by our officers. This is also about the training that we're trying to put in. And so I would suggest that when we looked at this in 2020, it would have been supportive if we would have passed that legislation so that we could have changed the standards.
All right, the final question in this round. Let's talk about Police Chief Rodney Bryant. He's been in his post now a little more than a year, taking over when Chief Shields, Erica Shields, left the force during all of what we had, the turmoil going on in the city of Atlanta at that time. Just want to know, people are asking, if elected mayor, how do you plan to address the position of police chief? Will Chief Bryant, who came out of retirement, continue in that position? Let's start with you, Mr. Dickens.
Yeah, I've stated that, I want to make sure I do this on merit and metrics. I judge the police, by the police chief, by how well they bring down violent crime in the first 100 days, by how we do recruitment to make sure that we get to the 250 officers and are on our way to that by recruiting officers from other jurisdictions, as well as having a recruitment class over and over again that we can get to that number. The other judgment is by the attrition rate that we need to bring down to make sure more officers stay on the force. And the fourth is how well we quickly implement our community-based policing strategies and activities. If this current chief can, within the first 100 days, hit those markers, then that chief will keep his job. This is a contract between myself and the chief. It's not about just who the chief is. It's about what the chief does for the citizens of Atlanta. It's easy to constantly say that it's the chief's problem, that we have to fire the chief. That's always the politically expedient and easy way to go about things. But what you have to do is say, we really care about the outcomes. We care about, is the crime rate gone down, and are we getting the police officers trained in the way we want them to be? And so I would say that we will give that to the chief for right now, and he'll know the standards that we're looking for. The dashboard will be viewable by all of you for those 4 standards, and if he hits them, he stays. Meanwhile, I'll stay ready and having plenty of conversations with individuals that always want to come to Atlanta because they're calling my phone right now.
Ms. Moore, your comments.
So I have stated that, whether it's the police chief or any department, I've got to have the team that's going to be able to do a couple of things, and that is keep our city safe, and the other is to make sure citizens feel safe in their interaction with police. So my plan is to have a new interim chief when I'm sworn into office. At the same time, do a national search, and I will have people at the table who will be helping me do that search, doing that evaluation, and then make a decision on a permanent chief. I'm not married to whether it's an internal hire or an external hire. I just want to make sure that I'm looking at all of the potential candidates who can bring about the things that I want. Safety for our city and citizens feeling safe in their interaction with our officers.
Affordability is a big issue in the city of Atlanta. Many people can no longer afford to live here. Many of those individuals have been here for a very long time. We're going to shift gears to affordable housing now. And everybody has a different definition of affordable housing. So I would like to know your definition of affordable housing and what specific policies would you enact to produce new affordable housing in the city? And will you change the culture in how the city provides public incentives to big-time developers? And I will start this with Ms. Moore.
So there's affordable housing, and then there's housing affordability. And so there is the one set of people being able to have the income level that will allow them to get buy-in or to rent. And then there is a large spectrum of what affordable housing is. It starts on the lower end with those who are unsheltered, who have no income and need somewhere to stay, to those who are on the lower AMI, 30% or less, and 50% AMI, those that the Atlanta Housing Authority are supposed to serve, and we've got to get them serving. I want a wholesale change in the Housing Authority and get them moving. Then you can move up to our city employees who say, hey, I can't live in the city, I'm on call, but I have to drive 40, 50 minutes to get to the city. Workforce housing, and then that missing middle, the middle income people who are working, who have decent jobs, but can't afford these high housing prices. So it's a spectrum of people that are in that affordability, and we need to be able to provide the type of affordable housing that each and every one of those sets and subsets can afford. And I want to use our city-owned property, and I want to use property in our land bank authority, working with individuals, but also partnering with our nonprofit organizations. And incentives will be used when we want something. We will offer the incentives when you produce what we want, not the other way around.
Mr. Dickens?
Affordable housing is to make sure that people don't pay more than 30% of their income on their housing. And right now, Atlanta has about 40% of the public is doing that. And then it gets worse when you get to 50% of your income being used to go on housing. And we have about 20 to 25% of the public doing that, which means they have less money affordable for food, for medicine, for daycare, for transportation, and for utilities, which Georgia has the highest utility burden in the nation. And so since 2010, the housing cost in Atlanta has increased by 50%. But the income of working folks has only increased by 10%. So over time, a lot of people began to be cost burdened. This is why I will build or preserve 20,000 units of affordable housing over 8 years. We're going to build on all Atlanta Housing Authority lands rapidly using for-profit and nonprofit developers. That's Bankhead, Bowen Homes, Hollywood Court, etc. And then we're going to also make sure that we get people down payment assistance to get mortgages, because NACA and Invest Atlanta can aggressively help people with their first-time home buyers to be able to afford these homes. And there's a 203K program that I helped put in place that allows you to buy a home and do the renovations at the same time in some of these communities that we really want to see development. So this is the last thing I'll say about this. When I was at Invest Atlanta, I changed the program to say that we will never give incentives unless you set aside 10 to 15% of the units for affordability. And I made Fulton County do that as well.
All right, Mr. Dickens, let's start with you. Let's talk about what we're seeing. What policies, what type of things would you put in place to halt the gentrification of our neighborhoods and displacement of some of our legacy residents?
This is a moral issue. These individuals that have sown seeds in this culture for decades, they deserve to live in Atlanta. They deserve to be in proximity to new amenities that are coming up. These are the folks that educated me at Mays High School and Southwest Middle School and LP Miles. These are the people that we have to look out for. And that's why when I'm mayor, I'll make sure that we set aside their assessments to make sure that their property values won't go up a certain rate just because someone next to them or in their neighborhood has built a $500,000 home. home. The seniors should have a tax freeze on their increases. And at the same time, this is what I've done by making sure that we have senior rehab, housing rehab, where I've given $30,000 to fix their roofs, to fix their HVAC units, to fix their windows, also to give them guardrails and handlebars so they can age in place in the home that they live in. These are things I've already done for hundreds of seniors on the West Side Beltline Trail and other places. When I'm mayor, we're going to continue these programs to make sure our legacy residents can stay in place. And then what we also have to do is help our legacy residents have a trust, a will that allows them to not have to go to probate in the event of their passing, that these can go to their kids or go to the person of their choice, so that we don't have gentrification happening by outsiders buying grandmama's house. This is a part of our stabilization, and I'll have an office of anti-displacement in the city to help navigate seniors through these processes.
Ms. Moore.
Can I get you just to repeat the question? So?
Just wondering what plans, what kind of policies, what kinds of things will you put in place to halt the gentrification, the displacement of our legacy residents?
So one of the first things we've got to do is make sure people can stay in their homes, and that we have some neighborhoods right now that are essentially affordable, and we need to create an avenue where that life cycle will be longer. And that means that we need to look at each neighborhood and see where the standards are and see where we need to do investment, whether it's street investment, infrastructure investment, but investment in the people that are there, whether they're seniors or those who are on a fixed or low income, and helping them with very expensive, sometimes rehab to their homes. We also need to look at the tax burden that people have and see, I would love to see that we can freeze property tax assessment for legacy residents. If you've lived in your home 15 years or longer, that your assessed value would not go up. That will keep you from having higher property taxes. Now, that would have to come with the school system, which is 56 cents out of every dollar of your property tax, and Fulton County, which is the other 20-some-odd%, and we at the city is 23% agreeing to that. But that is another big area where people get lost out of their home. And we also don't talk about it, but the income burden that people have of staying in their homes with utilities. We have a high utility burden in the city of Atlanta. You know, we have some of the highest water and sewer rates in the country, as well as electric and others. And so we need to be talking to the Public Service Commission and others about decreasing that utility burden as well.
My next question, I will start with Mr. Andre Dickens. The city of Atlanta is booming with development. Development increases property taxes. Those property taxes potentially make it unaffordable for legacy residents in the city. Now, other cities have carved out protections, and I want you to also think about eminent domain in Peoplestown. Other cities have carved out protections for legacy residents. Are you willing to carve out similar protections for legacy residents in the city of Atlanta? Mr. Dickens.
The answer is yes, and what you're referring to is often called a community benefits agreement. When large-scale developments come into an area, to be able to make sure that the community benefits from those large-scale developments and that they don't get displaced, that they will have an opportunity to not have their taxes increase, and also that they will have the ability to work in those jobs that are in those places, or to be a part of the contracts for the development of those businesses. I'll give you an example. When Microsoft stated that they were coming to Atlanta, I looked at Brad Smith, the president, and I said, it's good that you're going to have buildings in Atlanta, but I want to know how many Atlantans are going to be in your buildings. It's important for us to note that this is how I created a program. My program is now training hundreds of people to be able to get great jobs at Microsoft, because this is, and it's free. And this is a way to make sure that incomes increase so that people can actually continue to live in the communities that they are already in, and to be able to thrive in Atlanta and not have to always be on government assistance or in affordable housing. This is also about making sure that we have new amenities in the area, because the areas that I live in, I've lived in areas that have been food deserts and areas that deserve to have more amenities. This is why when I'm mayor, I'm going to make sure that I use my incentives wisely, and those incentives are going to go to people that are in communities that have been starving for development, and we'll do development without displacement by having community benefits agreements.
Thank you, Ms. Moore.
So that I'm clear that I specifically answer your question, could you summarize it for me again?
Absolutely. With new development comes increases in property taxes. those property taxes can make it unaffordable for legacy residents. I also want to throw in the eminent domain policy, in particular Peoplestown, which is a form of displacement as well, and the catalyst is the city. Would you carve out, like other cities have done, programs to make sure legacy residents are protected under those circumstances?
Yes, and this allows me to expand on the other question that I was answering about how we deal with legacy residents, particularly as it relates to property taxes. I think one of the best tools we can use is freezing assessed value. Now, that doesn't mean the taxing jurisdiction may not increase the taxes, but that is where the rubber meets the road. If you live in a home and it's worth $100,000 and the next house down the street ends up at $400,000 or $500,000, eventually your value is going to go up and your taxes are going to go up. And so that's why I'm going to be fighting very hard for that property tax freeze of the assessed value freeze, so that property taxes don't go on. As it relates to eminent domain, and all of us know the story of Peoplestown, and that is certainly one that needs to be resolved immediately. I believe it's a stain on the city to have people forcibly removed from their homes, and particularly when you hear the underlying stories as to what happened and did not occur. We need to make sure that we make them whole, allow them to stay in their property, find engineering solutions to allow the flooding to be alleviated in the city, take our losses as a city for what has occurred and move on and not do it again. I was proud to introduce legislation to make sure the council would never again be able to pass legislation not knowing what properties they were eminent domaining.
Thank you.
You brought up something very interesting. We've done some digging, and the median home price in the city of Atlanta is $400,000. That's right, $400,000. But you look at what residents are making. The median household income is just short of $60,000. Is that sustainable? We're going to begin with you, Ms. Moore.
I often ask myself, who are these people and what do they do for a living that are able to afford it? And, when you have $24,000 being the income for those that are in a lower strata of our city, they'll never be able to afford a $400,000 home. We are getting Microsoft. We're getting a lot of these big businesses, and people are moving here from other cities. They're moving here from California and New York and other places where $400,000 is a bargain. But we need to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to make sure people who live here, who are living off the income that they make in this city, either one, have the ability to increase their income, or two, have the ability to be able to stay in the homes that they are now. And I certainly encourage people, if you do have property in Atlanta, to try your best to stay in it and not be succumbed to these predators that are all over our community trying to buy up your property. It is not sustainable, and I'm in real estate. I've been in it a little bit because I serve more than I do that. But one thing I do know about it is that the market will bust. It has done it over and over again, and then we'll be dealing with another issue. But right now, the increase in prices is not sustainable for legacy residents of the city. That's why we may need to increase, we have to increase our anti-displacement funds.
Mr. Dickens.
Yes, as I stated earlier, since 2010, the cost of housing has increased by 50%. That's for sale and for rent. So that's why you see housing prices have almost doubled in the past 11 years. And so this is a problem that we have to solve for on two fronts. One is the housing cost. The other is the affordability, which has to do with income. And so when I say that I'm going to build rapidly on all of this affordable housing land, on AHA land that we have, it's not all rental. Some of those properties will be townhomes, single-family homes, as well as apartments. So when we talk about affordable housing, if you look at Centennial Place or East Lake, you'll see that there are homes that were sold for sale that are actually affordable for individuals in the 60 to 80% AMI area. And so what we want to do is be able to do that again when I'm mayor. But also the affordability part is about incomes. We have to continue to get people up the ladder and not import talent from from Seattle and San Francisco to take on these jobs. We have so much untapped talent in Atlanta, and that's why I created the Technology Career Program to train people to get $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 jobs so they can afford housing in the city of Atlanta from Atlantans and not have to import this talent from other places where they can't afford to live, so they come here to live and take the jobs here. It's about stabilizing the community and letting everybody rise in income and affordability at the same time. We can do both.
Georgia is about to get a whole lot of money. The infrastructure bill recently passed, signed by President Joe Biden, means federal dollars are coming to the state, specifically to the city of Atlanta. What projects do you specifically plan on investing in with federal dollars from this bill? Ms. Moore, I will start with you.
So that comes in several categories, and so that gives us a large number of projects that we can do. But one of the first things in those categories, I want us to look at the promises we've made that we have not kept. And those are projects that were on Renew Atlanta bond funds, even as far back as the Quality of Life bond funds that have not been done. And we can fund those, make those a priority. Then particularly under transit, I would love to see us put what we can towards the Beltline rail, the corridor on Camilton Road in Southwest Atlanta, even see how far we can get to with the Clifton corridor and other transit projects, because we got to get ourselves out of our cars. We've got to deal with our infrastructure needs, our below ground needs, our sewer, our water pipes, because we're talking about building a lot of density, and we certainly got to get rid of those potholes that make you cuss when you hit them on the road. And so there's just a lot of things that we can do, but what we have to do is be smart about how we use the money, leverage the dollars that we can with other funds, make sure that when we do our contracting that we're getting fair, honest, amount of service for the work that we're asking, and provide oversight to make sure the dollars are being spent in an appropriate manner, making sure that we take advantage of every dollar that we have and that we make it to the benefit of the citizens we serve.
Andre Dickens.
This is a huge opportunity for the city of Atlanta. This infrastructure bill is going to do a lot for us. And what I want to do is be able to be smart about how we use those resources. This is why I created the Atlanta Department of Transportation. I'm the first city councilman to ever create a department in the city. And this is because infrastructure is very important. And so I want to make sure first that we build out the Beltline rail and also send it down to Camilton Road so that individuals that live down near Greenbrier don't have to continue to spend 40 minutes on a bus to get to the nearest MARTA station. I added that to the mix when I was a city council person, when I was over the Community Development Committee. This is important to make sure that we also do small projects that have a huge impact, sidewalks around schools and around senior centers, to make sure we do things that people can see very quickly. Also, of course, our below ground, which is our sewers. We have a combined sewer still in some places, and we have a lot of stormwater challenges where we have flooding across our city. And this is how we can be able to help the people in Peoplestown to be able to not be displaced, but help put that vault in place that we are ready to make sure that the 4 families can stay in place while we still serve the community and stop this, and have this retention pond to stop this flooding. I also see parks and art as part of our culture that needs infrastructure as well. So this bill will go quite a long ways in our transportation, because it's about getting people where they're going in life, not just about where they're going each day.
All right, let's talk about mass transit. It was mentioned by both of you at some point during the evening. And as this city continues to grow, we know we're going to need our transportation system to grow as well. Is part of your plan to build, to create an amazing world-class mass transportation system? We'll start with you, Mr. Dickens.
Absolutely. You know, I grew up riding MARTA. I actually rode MARTA to school most days because I lived in a part of Atlanta that wasn't zoned for my school. I went to Mays and I was supposed to go to Harper, and so I had to ride MARTA. And so I take MARTA early and often now. And what I want to do is continue to improve MARTA for the current rider so that MARTA can continue to grow for those who want to be able to ride it now. And that's about expanding MARTA. That's why I was proud to be part of the solution set for the More MARTA plan. And what I said was we have to add to that mix as we're using this More MARTA plan that we had to have equity geographically and demographically as a part of the mix. Getting people out of their cars is so important for our equity as well as our environment, and it costs less to be able to get on MARTA than it does to be able to own a car these days with the high gas prices. So what I did was I implemented that so that we're going to have new infill stations, also bus rapid transit in certain corridors, but we have to expand MARTA, and I'm going to be working on a regional basis with the Atlanta Regional Commission and our state legislators up in Gwinnett to be able to, and our commissioners in Gwinnett, to hopefully get MARTA going up 85 and also with Cobb going up 75, because a lot of the traffic that we have in our city, those are the license plates that are blocking you going up and down the road. It's a lot of people from other jurisdictions coming into the city each day, and we need to have a rapid transit system. One day, I hope that MARTA will be free for everyone. That's my big goal, and by 2035 to be able to have MARTA free. That'll make sure people ride it, and it'll help our environment.
Ms. Moore, world-class transportation system?
Yes, well, you know, MARTA and our transit system is a tale of two people. And the one is the people who need it and have to use it, and those who choose to use it. And so those who need to use it to get to the store, to go to visit their cousin, to go to the doctor, to do their everyday travel because they don't have a car, are the ones who have really kept the backbone of the transit system. Those who choose to use it are like many pretty much of us are here. If you have a car and you understand that Atlanta becomes very a car-centered culture. And that's because that's how we want to get around, and then we complain about traffic, but we don't want to admit we're part of the traffic. So the key is trying to get those who can choose to use it, and that's why I want us to focus very heavily on how do we make MARTA more convenient for those who can choose to use it, because if it's convenient, it's easily accessible, you can get where you need to go or connect with our rail and our points, then you will use it. And one point, we talked about smaller buses that can get up in neighborhoods, further up in communities, and connect people with our transit stations. Those are the things that will make people who have a car say, you know what, I'm going downtown, I'm going to leave my car at home because I know that little bus is coming around and they'll take me to the train station and I can be dropped off at Peachtree Center or 5 Points right where I need to go. That's what we need.
Thank you.
Candidates, let's talk about the future of Atlanta, our children. There are several Atlanta public schools. They have been deemed underperforming. Hydration specialists, known as the water boys. The vast majority of them actually went to an APS school. Even though the city mayor does not have direct control over the school system as other major cities, how do you work directly with the school system in order to create remedy for our young children? And I will start with Ms. Moore.
Well, I would say that we need to quit the lip service of saying we're going to work with school systems and actually do it. There are ideas I have, like a program where I would love our school system, particularly in those communities that are more challenged, to drop the kids on the bus off at a recreation center where we can pick it up from there, get them after school training, feed them a meal, expose them to STEM or recreation or whatever they want to do. And the key is doing what kids want to do so that they can stay attentive and active. There are many other ways. We can also help partner with them because, as you know, when COVID and kids had to go home, there were many of them who were not able to get technology. And we can use our leverage as a city to try to make sure that everybody is connected to the internet. It is now an essential utility for people to use. And the other thing that we can do is provide the programs that they're not doing, using our rec centers for getting our unions maybe to come in and teach the kids trades and teach them other things. And as it relates to the water boys, if they just want to sell water, I would love for us to give them an opportunity to sell water in our parks during our festivals, jazz festivals and other events where they're off the street, but they're also being able to sell it directly to people in the park. There are ways to allow them to do it, but they have to do it safely, and it cannot be in our intersections.
Andre Dickens.
Yeah, who better than an APS grad to make sure that APS and the city have a great relationship as I graduated from Atlanta Public Schools, Mays High School. This is why when as a city council member, I created the Joint Commission that said that 3 city council members and 3 school board members should meet quarterly to go over things that are related between the two: after school programs, summer programs, crosswalks and sidewalks, abandoned properties next to the schools. These are things that we discussed. When we got our infrastructure bill last time, what we did was we put more flashers around each school zone using city resources to help the school system. This was my project. This was my legacy legislation because I tied the school system and the city together. When I'm mayor, I'll create a chief education officer, and that office will work from cradle to career with the youth in the city, with APS and early childhood education providers, so that our youth have a pathway, a predictable pathway to performance, to get out and to grow up, to have these things that we do with the city. Remember, you're in school 8 hours a day. The other 16 hours a day, you're in the city. You basically have sidewalks and you have traffic lights and crosswalks and housing needs that the city should be taking care of. As it relates to water boys, I was basically a water boy growing up because we sold apples and Krispy Kremes and everything else, but we also had adult supervision. We had T-shirts and gear that was set aside so everybody knew it, and we only did it on Saturdays and Sundays. That's where I got my entrepreneur spirit from.
Thank you. Ms. Moore.
The question again. I thought I answered it first.
My apologies.
We're going to go on and talk about something that, you know, the nation knew about, and that was the Atlanta Public School scandal. What happened in Atlanta was a travesty. We all know that. How do you now look at changing the culture and helping in creating equity in the Atlanta public school system? You mentioned some things that could possibly work, but how will you make that happen? Mr. Dickens, we begin with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I was not on city council when that occurred, but I've been living in Atlanta most of my life, being born and raised here. That was embarrassing, and it hurt us. And we're still seeing the ramifications of that, the results of that, and the devastation of that scandal. And so we never want to go back to that time. That's also a part of corruption. And so what we want to do is make sure that we have this great relationship with APS and having a chief education officer to take care of a lot of the things that the city and the school system can work on. I work closely right now with the school superintendent, Lisa Herring, and I work with the previous school superintendent, making sure that the city gave the school system the deeds, making sure that the belt line paid the schools their money. And so all of these things are performance that you can check on my resume, that I've done these things to make sure that the schools and the city are tied together. But as it relates to high stakes testing, and it relates to teachers that want to cheat, to overcome the challenges that they have in the classroom and the ability to teach kids that may have challenges, what we have to do is put every kid first. And therefore, we have to wrap our arms around them and embrace them with after school care, tutoring. Every child should be in some extracurricular activity with adult supervision that then provides them a balanced education in school and out of school, so that they don't have to then go back to school hungry or unattended to, so that then the teacher has to make up for it by cheating on by changing the answers for the kid. I think that we set a culture that we work together, those type of things go away.
That's your time. Thank you very much. Ms. Moore.
So with equity as a focus, that means that we need to be looking at those areas in our city that are around the low-performing schools and providing additional activities and working, first work with the school system, but then providing additional activities. I was so proud as president to do more girls in STEM, where we specifically targeted young girls who were middle school and exposed them to science, technology, engineering, and math. And it was phenomenal. And some of the schools started their own robotics program, and many of the girls really enjoyed those activities, and I believe will continue on. So where we can, as a city, we can support our school system. I would love our school system to learn more about what happens at the city, expose them to our wastewater treatment plants, our water treatment plants. You know, people turn on the water or flush the toilet, and I don't think they know what happens to it after that. Our kids need to see that, and maybe they may have an interest in being a treatment operator or something like that. So we can be growing our next generation population of city employees. But there are ways that we can intersect, and there are ways that we can support. And I want to use our city facilities and our partnership with the school system to back them up and continue to enrich and nurture our kids and provide activities that the school system may not be able to handle.
Atlanta is home to many colleges and universities, but a recent study shows that college graduates cannot live in the city they graduated from. Specifically, historically black colleges and universities, like one we're at today. What will your administration do to bridge that economic divide with graduates? And Mr. Dickens, I will start with you.
Yeah, part of what makes Atlanta what it is our great HBCUs. We're standing on a campus right now that's awesome. And Dr. French, we thank you for your leadership. And this is a phenomenal institution. And this is what we have to do. The government has to be an ally and a support mechanism with these HBCUs. When we ask companies to come here, yes, they're coming because we have the world's busiest airport. Yes, they're coming because we have this great weather. But you know where they're coming here? Because we have this great talent pool, these HBCUs. Companies all over America are trying to figure out the diversity of their workforce. Well, when you're in Atlanta and you get graduates that graduate from these great schools, you have a diverse workforce built in. And that's why I want to work carefully with our HBCUs, with my Atlanta Department of Labor. When we're talking about good paying jobs, great jobs, this is a source. These graduates right here. In my Tech Bridge program, what we're doing right now is at Spelman, we're training those the women that are about to graduate, we're training them on computer for finance for JP Morgan. So all of the graduates that are going on to do finance, they're getting trained by me for free to be able to have a higher income when they graduate. We're going to do that at all the HBCUs, and the Propel Center that's coming here is going to be an awesome resource to be able to give these universities the opportunity to have technology and graduates that are experts in technology right here. And the city needs to use these universities for their research. And I'll be doing that right now once I become mayor.
Time. Ms. Moore?
So, we have to be very intentional about the outcomes that we want to have. And there are many opportunities. Let's start at even at city government. We need to be partnering more closely with our colleges and universities, and particularly our historically black colleges and universities. Whether their discipline may be public administration or finance or whatever, why aren't we partnering with them and allowing them to be able to have internships there, and then perhaps to move into jobs so that we can have a talent pool? And when we have people like Microsoft and other larger companies and corporations come in, that we have an agreement that they're going to be working and tying themselves to one or many of our universities so that they have a pipeline. The city of Atlanta used to have the First Jobs program, the First Source Jobs program. And we need to make sure that we reinstitute that, where when we're having these large contracts, particularly for professional services, that we ask that if they're going to hire people, that they hire people in Atlanta, and we add into that our HBCUs and other colleges and universities. We have to be intentional about providing those mandates where we can and incentives where we cannot, to make sure that the people who graduate from the colleges have a job and can stay here in Atlanta.
All right, let's move on to our lightning round right now. 30 seconds is what you're going to get for your answers. No rebuttals. These are going to go quick. So we want to start with, first question, why should the residents of Buckhead want to remain part of Atlanta? Mr. Dickens.
Yeah, we have one city with one future together. I'm asking Buckhead to give the new mayor a chance to get some runway to get started on bringing violent crime down, but also bringing up the city services. Buckhead should stay in the city. We've grown together. We need to stay together, and I'll make sure we do that by constantly going to Buckhead, but also doing the right thing about all of the citizens of Atlanta. I've lived in Buckhead, Southwest, Northwest, Midtown. I want to make sure that the city is safe for everybody, including Buckhead, and also that everyone gets the city services. We do that, Buckhead is stay?
Ms. Moore.
Because help is on the way. When you elect me mayor, I'm going to make the city safe across the city, no matter what neighborhood you live in. I'm going to make sure that you get the city services that you're paying for and that you deserve. And I'm also going to make sure that we are operating a transparent, ethical, and honest government. I'm going to work day one because I'm day one ready as mayor. And once you get good leadership, you would not want to leave this great city.
Ms. Moore, give us one example that will prove to voters your administration will be more transparent than the current administration.
Well, I'm the one that has started the conversation about transparency at City Hall. I've fought for 3 or 4 years against colleagues and mayors to make sure that we can get our expenditures online so people can see how their money is spent. And I know why we had to fight against it, because they didn't want us to know how the money was spent. And so I am all for it. One of my goals as I leave for mayor is we will be known as the most transparent government in America. That is my goal, and that is my promise.
Tom.
As a city council member, I have always published my expenses for everyone to see. I've also, I was the candidate of this election that asked all other candidates to produce our taxes. I asked everyone to do so. Council President Moore said she would, and she didn't until 10 p.m. after Election Day. This was something, this is transparency right there. I publish my taxes for all to be able to see. I will run this government transparently, even with my personal taxes. And that is a part of transparency that you can trust, as well as government spending transparency.
Mr. Dickens, first day in office, what is your first thing that you plan to do?
Yeah, the first thing I plan to do is go meet with all of our command staff of the police department, and then go to roll call throughout the entire day to make sure those officers understand that I support them, but also what we're going to do to be able to solve this violent crime wave. That's the first thing I'm going to do. And then I'm also going to go out there and go talk to many, many community members across the city, just to be able to say, I see you, and here's my access to, here's direct access to me. Then we'll get to working on auditing the city so that we can know what customer-facing departments need to be changed.
Ms. Moore?
Well, the first day I will be getting sworn in as the next mayor and speaking to the great citizens of Atlanta. And then I will be meeting with my team and starting the process of making sure that we develop the full team that can serve the citizens of this city, and getting around to all the employee groups as well as all of the citizens north, south, east, and west in our city. My first few weeks will be making sure that I communicate with any and everyone I can so that they can trust that they have a leader that's day one ready to get to work for them.
Thank you.
All right, candidates, we're almost there. Reaching the end of the debate tonight. You did a remarkable job, both of you. Now you get an opportunity for a closing remark, your last pitch, 60 seconds to do so. And I will start with Ms. Moore.
Well, like so many Atlantans, I came to this city with hopes and dreams and promises. And whether you're from here or whether you came here like I did, we all want those promises fulfilled. And when I got here, I got to serving the city as a neighborhood president, and I moved my way up the line to be a council member and now the president of city council. But I realized that the city that I love needs help, and it needs me to step up into a greater position where I can really put my hands on the wheel and steer us in a better direction. The biggest threat to our brand right now is the safety, and I want to make sure that every neighborhood is safe across the city. People are paying dearly for the services that we're not getting. Our city is dirty. It needs to be cleaned up. There are so many issues before us. I want to be our next mayor because I'm day one ready. I have the experience, I have the knowledge, I have the know-how, and I've demonstrated. I would love to be our next mayor.
I'm Andre Dickens, and I was born and raised right here in Atlanta, Georgia. First in my family to get a college degree when I entered Georgia Tech to get a chemical engineering degree. This election is about the soul of the city of Atlanta. It's about whether or not we're moving forward or are we moving backwards. I have the head, the heart, and the hands to lead this city at this time. The head is to be able to manage the complicated and manage the competing interests of a diverse city, to be able to manage 8,500 employees, to be smart enough to set the vision for the city. But also the heart is about being able to bring this violent crime wave down while also making sure that we develop this city inclusivity, to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to go from poverty to prosperity, to thrive in this city. But the difference that we've heard here today is about the things that I see as a problem, I solve them. Income inequality, I've worked on a technology career program to take people from poverty to prosperity. When we see infrastructure challenges, I created the Department of Transportation. I'm smart enough to listen, strong enough to lead, and I got a plan and a body of work to prove it.
Want to thank both of our candidates for joining us this evening. Give them a big round of applause. Want to also thank all of our community leaders who have joined us in the audience. Want to thank our partners for making tonight possible, Georgia Stand Up and Clark Atlanta University, and all of my colleagues at CBS 46. Hopefully you've been able to make an informed choice as you head to the polls either tomorrow, because early voting has begun, or on November 30th. This race affects anyone who lives, works, shops, visits friends in Atlanta. So it's important to all of us, Rashad.
That's right. Your vote is your voice. Don't let anyone shut you up.
You heard it. So thank you so much for coming to join us tonight. And remember, get out there and vote. Have a great evening, everyone.